everyone for joining today's session on innovation to end energy poverty, a showcase for entrepreneurs. I'm Prachi. I'll be your host from IntelliCap for the session. And we are awaiting a few more participants as we speak, but in the interest of time, we thought we should just sort of go ahead and start the session. I'll not waste a lot of time, and I'll just hand over to our moderator for the day, Harry, who's a principal at Open Capital Advisors, to take the session forward and introduce our speakers for the day, and also introduce the Energy Catalyst that's sponsoring this session and also organizing it. Thank you. Over to you, Harry.
Thank you very much, Prachi. And thank you everyone to joining today. As Prachi mentioned, the session we're having today is called Innovation to End Energy Poverty, a showcase for entrepreneurs. As Prachi mentioned, my name is Harry Masters. I'm a principal at Open Capital Advisors, and we are one of the consortium member firms working under the Energy Catalyst program, which presents and sponsors this event today. As many of you know, over 1 billion people lack access to affordable, clean, and modern energy services across the world. In addition to that, over another 1 billion people have intermittent or low quality energy sources. Further to that, the COVID-19 pandemic over the last few years has drastically impacted economies across the world, particularly in countries with major energy access gaps, plunging millions into poverty and making it all the more important to focus our efforts on ensuring that all have adequate access to energy. Today, we'll provide a space for entrepreneurs and innovators to showcase their work in developing solutions that tackle this immense challenge. We have 6 companies with us here today, and I will let them all introduce themselves shortly. They represent the diversity of companies supported under the Energy Catalyst program, including technology innovators, software developers, and project developers as well. We will see presentations from each of them and then host a discussion following these presentations, in which we're really hoping to engage with you all that have joined us here today. First off, though, I would like to spend some time to introduce the Energy Catalyst program. So Tresta, if you could switch to the next slide, please. The program, funded by Innovate UK and several other co-funders, was developed to accelerate the innovation needed to increase energy access, addressing those problems mentioned before. It has 3 main pillars, the first of which is around competition, and specifically, the program provides grant funding to innovators in technology or business models. There have been 7 rounds conducted to date, and the 8th round is upcoming. The second pillar is collaboration. The program also fosters collaboration. This is both in the upfront processes and also during the company acceleration support phases of the projects. And the point here is to bring together the right stakeholders for partnership to effectively implement on these projects. So these can include the technology leads or the other on-the-ground implementers involved. And the third area of support is around acceleration. The program provides support to help companies fill gaps on their pathways to commercialization of their technologies or innovative business models. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Next slide, please. So far, the Energy Catalyst program has supported 345 projects and committed 140 million pounds. 60 million pounds specifically has gone to energy access, with projects in areas that include biomass or bioenergy, energy storage, solar, mini grids, productive uses of energy, and smart grids, among other segments. This work spans 29 countries across sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia. All of these projects supporting those goals under Sustainable Development Goal 7, while also focusing on gender equality and inclusion. Next slide, please. So to support each one of these companies, we have assembled a diverse consortium of partners, as mentioned, of which Open Capital is just one company supporting the grant recipients under the Energy Catalyst program. We provide them with a few different types of services, the first of which is tailored venture support. So this includes market analysis, strategy, business planning, technology and IP support, financial strategy and capital raising support, among other areas. The second area is knowledge management. This includes supporting companies and hosting common interest groups, sharing and disseminating various insights, and hosting events, including workshops and webinars and trainings. And finally, we have connections and resources. These include the development of commercialization guides, development of case studies, hosting and facilitating events, and introductions for the various companies that participate in the program. I think that's a good point to say that today we're hoping to foster some of these connections with you in the audience, to potential partners that might be involved in the planning or implementation of current or future projects under the program, or to investors that might want to know more about the businesses and figure out how they can support these businesses in scaling their innovations. We hope that all can learn more about the types of companies here, about the innovation that the Energy Catalyst program is promoting to support accelerating access to energy across sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia. With that, we will now move ahead to some of the company presentations. We will have each of the participants to share about their companies, and we appreciate that all of the participants stick to a 6-minute timeline so that we can hear from everyone and ensure that there is time for discussion. Utsav will be managing the time, thanks for that. And we'll be in touch directly with each of you about timing. And again, for the audience, we would love for you to engage here with our speakers. There is an open chat function here, so feel free to share any questions in the Q&A discussion, and we'd be happy to bring those up during the Q&A session. So first up, we have a company called Gravitricity, and I will hand it over to the team to introduce themselves and share their presentation about their innovation. Over to you.
Thanks, Eric. Can you hear me all?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So Gravitricity is developing a gravity-based energy storage system for deployment in existing or new mine shafts. And it's a deceptively simple idea. Under the ground, you have, can we move on to the next slide? So under the ground of this schematic, you have the shaft itself. You have large weights moving up and down the shaft, and you have cables which are doing the connection to the top. And above ground, you've got one or more winches to pull the weight or weights to the top, and acting in reverse, those winches act like generators, so generating electricity as the weight falls back down to the bottom of the shaft. To date, we've been a team of specialist mechanical and electrical engineers. So each of these components has been thoroughly thought through in some detail. So for example, we know the minimum depth and diameter of a mine, which would make the system viable. We have IP in the composition of the weight, which we anticipate could be as much as 500 tons. We've carefully determined the specification and performance and capabilities of the cables, and have chosen a supplier which meets these requirements. And we know the number of cables we need in order to give the cables an appropriate amount of redundancy. And at the top, clever gearing ratios ensure that the generator is spinning suitably fast, even when the weight is traveling down the shaft slowly. We've got guidance mechanisms and control mechanisms in order to ensure that the weight falls to the bottom of the shaft evenly. So there's more I could say on that side, but I think the overall message is that it's a carefully designed system. But although the engineering is impressive and the integration is novel, the science isn't new. Gravity-based energy storage in the form of pumped hydro has been around for 100 years or more. And so the large majority of all energy storage systems across the world are gravity-based energy storage systems. Next slide, please. We've come a long way since 2017, when we really got going. We've been awarded more than £1 million in grant funding and have received investment of over £3.5 million in equity funding. We filed 7 patents across a number of different areas. 4 of those have been granted and 3 are pending. And 2 independent reviews of large-scale energy storage systems from Imperial College London have concluded that our system, because of its longevity, because of its non-degradation in performance and other characteristics, is cheaper over a 25-year period, measured in dollars per megawatt hour than all competitor technologies, including flow batteries, including lithium ion, including compressed air, and so on. But probably most importantly, earlier this year, we successfully completed a concept demonstrator, which was installed in the docks up in Edinburgh. This was actually originally scheduled for 2020, but was put into 2021 because of COVID. And it was up there for a number of months and was tested relentlessly across a number of different areas, including mechanical system competence and safety systems and so on. But probably most importantly, we validated that we could respond to grid signals in less than a second, which opens up significant and lucrative market opportunities and the ability to deliver continuous power from a multi-rate system. And so with that hugely important milestone under our belt, we're now actively focused on building our first full-scale, first-of-a-kind commercial project. We're evaluating potential sites with front runners in Czech Republic and Poland. And as I say, we're actively engaged in making that happen. Next slide, please. So looking forward, we've identified 4 different use cases in the industrial decarbonisation space, in balancing services, in energy access and mini grids, and in a co-location of the energy storage system with large-scale solar. And clearly, obviously, the market dynamics of the customer requirements, and therefore the storage system that we're looking to provide to each one of those markets is different and going to be configured differently. But hopefully that gives you an idea of where we're looking to focus. Next slide, please. So lastly, a quick discussion on mini grids and a bit of a deep dive on that. We as an organization are really passionate about this. It's not just a casual add-on. Top Team alone had over 60 years of experience in low carbon innovation and energy access markets. And we're really excited about the potential of our system in this sector. So one parting thought, one of the things we're excited about is the ability to add energy storage to this. And there's an interesting parallel here with telco. The developed world has had landline phones for many years before moving to cellular, but the developing world has gone in an incredibly short space of time from no phones to mobile phones, and so leapfrogging effectively the landline stage. And I think similarly, there is a parallel here with energy. The developed world faces challenge incorporating storage and intermittency into a system which was designed and built for a different paradigm. And here too, the developing world could look to effectively step aside from these challenges. So the opportunity to embed, I think, energy storage into grid systems from the ground up is a very exciting one, and we're very much looking forward to being a part of that journey. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you very much, Robin, for sharing more about the opportunity here in your gravity-based system, and congratulations on all the progress that's being made. With that, we'd like to hand it over to Emily at Oxto to share her presentation. Emily, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Robin, as well. That was really interesting to hear. So my name's Emily. I'm joining from Oxo Energy. We are a relatively small business based in Guildford in Surrey, which is just outside of London in the United Kingdom. We are a team of ambitious and innovative engineers with a shared belief that access to a reliable electricity supply shouldn't be a privilege, as I'm sure we will agree. Our technology falls under the umbrella of energy storage, but we think that power storage is a slightly better term to describe our devices. Energy storage, power storage, and other smart energy systems are, in my unbiased opinion, likely to be the key enabling devices in facilitating the clean energy transition. At Oxo Energy, we create flywheel energy storage systems. So thinking about applications for our product in the global south, we consider problems like size-constrained grids and unreliable power networks, particularly in fast-growing economies where the demand for the electricity is high, and even in rural areas where unreliable power networks can leave towns without electricity for days. the OXO flywheel system can provide not only a solution that stores energy from renewables or excess grid supply, but it can be a solution that guarantees a reliable electricity supply and can slot into the existing power network and empower these existing power networks with the flexibility to include intermittent renewable energy sources within their existing structure. Okay, and if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in the top right, you can see this is one of our systems. This is from our pilot project in Nice. So we've been around since 2015, and from kind of 2015 to 2019, it's been mostly R&D, and we've begun to commercialize in 2019. So this was our first project. It was a project with IMRED at the University Côte d'Azur, and with the help of our local partners in France, we delivered a 65 kilowatt flywheel system there. This is our current standard size system. And this is going to sit within an ecosystem that includes lithium-ion batteries, PV, second life batteries, and EV chargers as well. So this is an IRIS smart city project where the flywheel is going to be tested on a number of different grid stabilization scenarios. Similarly, in the top left, we have a snippet from a project in Canada. Again, our flywheel is going to be sitting within a hybrid system, but this time focusing on renewable integration into a rural microgrid. So these two projects mostly showcase our applications in grid stabilization and renewable integration, which I would say are probably where we see the most traction, but also in our UPS systems for industrial applications. So our biggest project so far is a UPS application at a tea factory in Kenya. So this is the lower picture just on the right-hand side. And here we're going to be installing a 650 kilowatt flywheel system. So this is going to be like a plug and play kind of turnkey style container containing 10 individual flywheels. And that's another benefit of our systems is that you can add and minus flywheels depending on how much you need and your specific requirements. So Kenya is another hybrid system as well. The flywheels are going to be operating with solar, wind, and diesel generators. So if the power drops from the main power supply, whether that's from the grid or coming from solar, power will be drawn from all other available sources before going to the diesel generator. So saving the client a lot of money compared to how they were working on before. And again, this project's in Kenya. This is with the assistance of a local partner, Aria Finigi, and they are an energy company based in Kenya. Working with local partners, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Working with local partners is where we see most of our business developing over the next few years. Since commercializing in 2019, for the last 2 years or so, the majority of our pipeline has been made up of inbound inquiries. We do get a lot of traction, especially from industrial clients. And as we look to grow the business for the next year or so, local partners, we think, are a fantastic gateway to accessing serial commissions from customers within that market. Our commission in Kenya, once delivered, our local partner is going to be supplying us with more products that are contingent on the delivery of the first projects. So that's where we kind of see our route to market heading over the next few years. And then I will just drop a little bit about our funding round. So we are just about to close our first seed round on Seeders. Please feel free to go and check it out at some point. This seed round is going towards recruitment of senior engineers to help us optimize the facility, optimize the flywheel itself, and also expand a little bit in terms of our capabilities. Next, after we close this round, we're going to be moving straight into a Series A round. And this is again going to be focusing on recruitment to expand our team to be able to deliver on the projects that we have inbound. Yeah, and then a little bit further in the future, licensing is a fantastic opportunity and avenue that we are really looking to explore. And that's kind of where we see the future of the business going, because it provides customers and clients with a way to access our machinery without having to pay the entire cost up front. And where our mechanical batteries don't experience the same degradation as, for example, a lithium-ion battery, we can do licensing for 10 years and have maybe 2 or 3 customers using the exact same product within the lifespan of one flywheel. So thank you very much. I think we'll go into a little bit more of a discussion later, but thank you very much for listening to what I had to say about what we do.
Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing more about your storage solution. Exciting to see multiple innovations in the space here. And it will definitely be interesting to come back and discuss some of these in context with some of the other energy storage solutions available in the market or coming online, or even those also on the call here. So looking forward to that. With that, I will hand it over to Vanessa at Buffalo Grid. Vanessa, over to you.
Thank you, Harry. Could we go to the first slide? Can you guys see me? Because I can't see where I am, but that might have been me, but we can just start anyway. There's no need to see me. The important is the context. So a pleasure to be here, and thank you everyone for having us. So we at Buffalo Grid work on another angle or another side of energy poverty. And that is the impact that energy poverty has on connectivity. So if we look at, or just consider the fact that 6 years ago, about 1/3 of the world's population was using mobile internet, but that today it's more than half, it's quite a remarkable leap. But if we consider that still 3.8 billion of those people, so half of the world's population, have never experienced the internet, it's quite a shocking concept when we know that at least 3.8 billion of them, or 3.6 billion of them, live in places where there is already 3 and 4G. So when we look at solutions for connectivity, it isn't a question of satellites or heavy infrastructure of broadband. It's more a question of 4 main barriers to entry. And one of them actually revolves around access to power. So the first main barrier to entry is affordability. People in these markets cannot afford mobile data. It's normally very, very expensive, except in the case of India. The other one is digital skills. There is an extreme lack of digital skills across the board, which are not really helping people come onto the digital ladder. The other very important thing to notice is the lack of relevant content. So in order to gain skills, digital skills, education, financial skills, the content is essential. And once people gain access to the internet, sometimes they're overwhelmed or bombarded with, let's say, social media or different kind of platforms that have a great commercial benefit from connecting them, but yet again, not really a positive impact on them. And the last one is obviously infrastructure. So without access to power to charge your phone or your mobile device in the form of a tablet, you really cannot get connected. So what do we do at Buffalo Grid? We have developed, after many, many years of trials and testing on the ground, where we started in Africa and subsequently did a lot of R&D in India up until 2019, created the Stream Spot Plus, which is a solar powered, you can see the hub as we call them here, solar powered. So we connect to an 80-watt solar panel. We deploy them in places that have high population density and high mobile phone penetration, but low connectivity. So solar powered, we're already removing that final barrier of infrastructure. They are mobile network enabled, meaning that even in places where there's 3 or 4G, we can update all of the content. The hubs are deployed preloaded with content in 4 different verticals. So we have education, health, entertainment, and sport. And we constantly update all of this content using our cloud through the mobile network that exists in a region. And then very simply, our users come to the hub, connect to the offline Wi-Fi. They can download the app for free from the hub itself. So there's absolutely no need for any expenditure in becoming connected or having access to digital content and services. And then they can stream for free and charge their phones for free through the hubs. We've got next, so we're constantly updating and we can manage our content. And then this content, the usage, the cloud will give us reports of metrics and data. So we can actually learn a lot about users and groups of people that we know very little of or almost nothing about. So it's a very simple system that we have developed. Can we please go to the other slide, the next slide? Thank you. So as I mentioned, we work in places where there is a high population density. So we're looking at peri-urban areas in places like Bangladesh and Nigeria, where we are already working and we will be developing commercially. Well, we've already got test hubs there and we're going to be having our first larger scale deployment later this year. And then we're also working in refugee camps in Uganda and in Kenya. So we are going to be deploying in Bidi camp, which a lot of you might know. There is a huge infrastructural problem, but connectivity is essential. If we think about the fact that in the last 18 months with COVID, most of us were connected now, managed to continue working, but most importantly, our children were able to continue in education. With units like this, people can continue education, gather digital skills. We can bring all sorts of content. So within our different verticals of content, we've got our education system, which doesn't just bring the national curriculum or the syllabus that a country might ask for, but we're also providing additional learning. So we can provide things from the Open University or different language learning systems, coding for children, Sesame Street for children as well, but we can go as far as entrepreneurial skills, entrepreneurial practices through systems as this. So we do focus on all of those verticals, but one of the very interesting things about the hubs, what they can do is, depending on the content that we bring, we actually comply with 14 of the 17 UN sustainability goals. So through the content or direct engagement. We've got 3 different revenue streams. So one is our direct commercial deployments that we do ourselves. The second one is our humanitarian donation model, which we deploy at a cost, the service with a prepaid hosting service, and that gets deployed in places like refugee camps. And the final one is a franchise revenue share, where we're starting to work in places like Turkey, where we wouldn't personally go in and do our own deployment, but there is an interesting market and there are groups or partners who have invited us to go in there. We have raised so far £3 million in equity and have received £3 million in grants since the company started as a research project, as I said. It actually started as a project to charge phones for coffee farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. And that is the origins of the name of the company, because one of the things that somebody said when they were charging phones for coffee farmers was that buffaloes charge anything. So the company was named Buffalo Grid, but in recent months, we have found that there is a certain cultural connotation. When we were doing all of our R&D in India, it wasn't really relevant or made sense. So we have recently renamed our service the Stream Spot Plus, which basically tells a person what the service does. So you can stream from the hub or download from the hub. And the plus right now refers to the charging services. But in the near future, we will be bringing other types of services like commercial services for different communities. We can run surveys and find things and information, not just for commercial partners, but for impact partners, for health, for any, the hubs can be really used. It's almost a white canvas to really support sustainable development in different communities. I think that's pretty much it for us. We'd love to hear what questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And I think you've discussed something really important the Buffalo Grid is doing. I think it's important to note that the provision of energy doesn't just provide kilowatt hours or BTUs. It also provides essential services to support, the populations that do have access to that electricity. So thanks so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Harry.
Absolutely. With that, we'll move it on to our colleagues at Opia Technologies. Emily, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. So if we can get on the first slide, thank you. So thank you so much for having us on this panel. It's not our first time at CanCal, but it's always great to be here. So my name is Emily Cohen. I'm the impact lead at Upia. Upia was founded in 2017, and we're a SaaS CRM provider, initially designed for last mile distributors in the solar industry. We are now a platform for shared distribution business. So if you sell anything in the last mile and you want or need to digitize your business, if it's in water, cooking, agriculture, services, of course, energy and entertainment, then chances are we can help you. So if we can move to the first slide, the second slide, sorry. So what makes Upia innovative? Two things mainly. Firstly, it's affordability, and secondly, it's flexibility. So we basically adapt our platform to your business model and not the other way around. We're also modular, which means we can provide a holistic solution to your needs. So some of our clients, which are further down the road in their digitization journey, can have our supply chain platform. Some others can have the client-facing. But of course, everything speaks to each other. I just want to really quickly talk about our project we had with Energy Catalyst, because it has really been a great partner for us. So the most recent project we had was with a last mile distributor in Kenya, Give What. It was in Kilifi, Eastern Kenya, and we developed an innovative business model by using crowdfunding to bring energy to people who are closer to the bottom of the pyramid. So helping them, get and continue their journey on the energy ladder. So yeah, there's actually a great video done by Story by Design, which was in one of your slides, Harry, as a partner to Energy Catalyst, about the project itself on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. So if we move to the next slide. So I started 4 years ago. We were in Kenya, Tanzania, and East Africa. We expanded quite rapidly. Our global reach now goes across sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and India. So again, if you're anywhere in these regions or further away, and whatever business model you have, do come and speak with us, because this is the extent of the flexibility of the software. So we started with solar, and some of our key partners are clients in this industry, but we now work across multiple verticals because of the flexibility of the software. So I can take you through a couple of use cases in the next slide. Okay, so carbon offset project. So for these clients, our platform is really about tracking and reporting deployment. So being able to scale deployment and provide unequivocal proof of deployment to the different stakeholders in carbon offset projects. So tracking from the time the unit leaves the factory until they reach the hand of the end users, and then all of the data collection that is needed, which is usually quite a lot. And so our data collection functionalities have checks and balances to make sure that the data is of really high quality and reliable. And so you get data collection at onboarding when the units are solar distributed, and then later on for surveys. The platform is also about all of the internal audit processes. So that's one of the use cases. Then we have grouping. So this is the project I just mentioned with Energy Catalyst, whereby we basically provide risk management tools to distributors so that their overall risk remains the same, but then within different portfolios, you would have individually clients which have a riskier profile. So clients which typically would not be able to enter into a pay-go deal for a solar home system, as an example. And then we also see usage as a service as something that is coming more and more. So for instance, in mobility, their tracking is very important because you know the batteries are going to continuously change hands. So you need to know which battery is in which swap station, which battery is in the hand of which client. Also the ability to take a multitude of very small payments every day. Also in farming, for instance, we see farmers producing more in using a pay per usage model. So they only pay when they use the equipment. So I think that was mentioned before in the first presentation, but exactly as as Africa has leapfrogged landline infrastructure by using mobile phones, we see that they're probably gonna leapfrog ownership by renting more. So yes, that I think that was mainly my short presentation. So I look forward to taking your questions later. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you very much, Emily. And great to see the innovation here around last mile distribution, understanding that digitization is really helping bring a lot more insight, tracking, monitoring, etc. And how this is particularly important for the energy sector, as distribution, particularly for small scale systems, is vital. With that, we're actually moving to, I think, a rather different use case here. So I'd like to turn it over to the team at Carnot. And Francis, looking forward to hearing your presentation. So over to you.
Thanks, Harry. Hi everyone. I'm Francis Lemp, co-founder and director of equity raising and business development at Carnot. And to start off with, I'd like to actually take everyone back to 1824, when Monsieur Carnot worked out that the maximum theoretical efficiency engines can achieve was 85%. And now if we fast forward 200 years, the average efficiencies engines are achieving is less than half of that. So I'd like to introduce you to our technology, which brings this up to a game-changing 70% fuel efficiency. The global transition to net zero means that we need to start radically rethinking the way that we're generating and storing energy. And there are currently no production-ready alternatives to engines for very large and long-range applications, such as trucks, ships, and generators. So we've invented an engine that goes further, cleaner, and smarter, and by operating on hydrogen and biofuels, can revolutionize some of the most challenging industries to decarbonize and bring clean and affordable energy to all. So what is the key issue with modern engines, and why are they so inefficient? If you could go to the next slide, please. Well, modern engines will waste, on average, 1/3 of fuel to cooling systems that stop metallic components from melting. We're developing engines with key components manufactured from ceramics, able to withstand fuel combustion temperatures, eliminating the need for cooling systems, and therefore doubling efficiencies. And with double efficiency, Carnot engines can halve the fuel costs, reduce the total cost of ownership of engines by an average of 35% across our target markets. Crucially though, our vision is to drive our target markets to net zero emissions through mass adoption of our clean engines. And in order to facilitate this transition, our engines will also be able to operate on hydrocarbons, halving emissions along the way. Transitioning to net zero will then be achieved by simply swapping out the fuel delivery system to run on hydrogen and biofuels while the core engine remains the same. Next slide, please. So we've assembled a Formula One derived team capable of an extremely high pace of development, and we've gone from concept to prototype in under a year, which is unprecedented in our industry. Since launching in 2019, we've had a number of achievements. We've been awarded over a total of 900,000 in government grant funds. That includes 2 Innovate UK projects and a Eureka Eurostars one. We've raised over $1 million in pre-seed and seed funding, won a place on the UK Oil and Gas Technology Centre for Net Zero, partnered with BP and Equinor, filed our international PCTs and UK patents, formed strategic relationships, including with Fraunhofer, which is the world's leading research institute on ceramics, completed our Energy Catalyst 7 project, where we developed an energy access solution for Ethiopia, identified key low barrier market entry points through customer validation for pilot testing. And these are off-grid power generation for sub-Saharan Africa and marine vessel auxiliary power units. And for these low barrier market points, we've already got partners ready to carry out pilot trials. And we've also attained expressions of interest from industry, and that includes an OEM, an EU vessel operator, mini grid developer, and a genset manufacturer. Next slide, please. So during our Energy Catalyst 7 grant, we partnered with the Mekelle Ethiopian Institute of Technology to develop a game-changing genset that would increase the affordability and accessibility of energy in rural communities of the Tigray region. Together, we carried out a feasibility study and developed a business model for operating our engine on locally sourced biofuels. We identified small communities that had no access to the national grid and had a heavy reliance on burning of wood fuel and charcoal. And to meet their power demands with a clean solution, these communities preferred to adopt either a mini grid or biofuel biogas generator technology over a solar or wind-based solution. So we developed a Jatrifa-powered generator to meet the power requirements, along with a supply chain model and cooperative run business model for the purchase and running of these community gensets. So we plan to explore and trial our engines across the wider sub-Saharan African market, including both rural and urban applications. And we aim to be the go-to technology for backup generators in the new mini grid developments. So our momentum is building, and we'd be delighted for you to join us on our journey to move further, cleaner and smarter. We really appreciate your time and the opportunity to present, and please ask me any questions you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francis, and really excited about the potential with Carno there, and not just looking at brand new solutions and use cases, but taking what's a very old use case, 1800s, and finding better ways and more efficient ways to address those use cases. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Yash at Orcs Grid. Looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Perfect, Harry. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure being here introducing my company, Grid. We're a 4-year-old startup based in London and India. I myself am based in India. My co-founders here in the UK. We're focused on making IoT sensors and an analytics platform for energy optimization. Our core markets are the energy distribution network operators. So we work very closely with grid operators, but I think it just switched. I'm sorry. So we work very closely with grid operators, but also with large energy consumers to help them to understand if the grid infrastructure is working efficiently, or if there are any losses or issues in the network wherein we could improve the overall performance of the network. So next slide, please. So to give an overview of the challenge that we're trying to address, our focus is that energy companies, or the issue that we see is that energy companies globally are facing increasing challenges in getting access to sustainable, affordable, and reliable electricity. I noticed also in the chat that there were some questions about on this topic. Even though if renewables are becoming cost parity with fossil fuels, there's still challenges of how do we move from 10% or 20% renewable penetration to 100% penetration with all the grid balancing issues and so So with that, that's the first challenge that we noticed, that in sustainability, integrating low carbon technologies increases risks of failures and losses on the utility infrastructure. This is mainly around the fact that the grid infra was built in the early 1900s, and it was designed for unidirectional flow of power from large generating stations to the consumers. But as the situation is changing, now it's becoming more and more difficult for the grid operators to manage the infra in that sense. Of course, the second challenge around affordability, this is more interesting in my home country, in India, as well as other developing nations, where there's a lot of misuse and mismanagement of grid networks, leading to almost $90 billion globally, annually, per year, in energy losses, whether it's in theft or just technical losses and so on. So that's another big challenge that the utilities are facing. And then finally, there's the issue of reliability. These concerns are around growing demand from electrification of other industries, whether it's transportation or just electrification of rural populations that are not connected to the grid at this stage. So with these three, next slide. So with these challenges, we at Oxford, we thought that there has to be a better way at managing the infrastructure, and we came up with something called the Grid Analytics Platform. So the Grid Analytics Platform is a real-time multi-node monitoring system with advanced algorithms to optimize assets and improve efficiency. So the system is organized in three layers. The first layer is our IoT sensors, or the data acquisition layer. We've designed our units, which are called Seed, STEM, and SLS. These are Wi-Fi and cellular based retrofit enabled sensors that are installed on energy feeders, power transformers, circuit breakers, and other infrastructure on the utility points. The idea is that we acquire data if there is data not available with the customer, and of course, if there are legacy units, whether they're RTUs or relays, if they're already installed on the network, communicable, then we just integrate with their data sources over industry standard protocols, whether it's Modbus or IEC 104 and so on. So once we have the data coming into our cloud platform, then that's where we deploy our energy algorithms. These machine learning based analytics are all designed in-house with our data science team, and they're focused on three major verticals. The first set of algorithms are focused on asset optimization. So these are focused on ensuring that the assets are running in a very healthy condition. The second one is around energy losses and energy efficiency. And finally, the third set is around outage reductions. So once we have this data coming in, then finally we have a data dissemination layer. It's a web SCADA platform, where it's very simplistic driven. There's alerts and whether they're SMS or email alerts to understand if there are issues or any improvements that can be done on the network. Next slide, please. So with this, what is it that we have achieved so far? So we started in 2017. We've raised through Innovative Care and other grant equity-free grants about for £500,000 so far. And with that, we've managed to build a completely patented system in the UK. That's from the sensors to the platform and the analytics. We've deployed our system at scale so far. So mainly we've had a lot of traction in India. We're monitoring electricity supply to 3 major states. So these are 5-year contracts with an OPEX-based revenue model, where the customer is paying for the data that they get and the insights that we are generating. So we bear the capital cost of installing our sensors. We have about 2,500 plus energy nodes that we're monitoring right now in real-time basis. And and we've also had corporate partnership with Schneider to build some of the the asset health analytics. We've collaborated with universities in the UK and in India. In the UK, we work with University of Reading as one of the Innovate UK partners to develop other analytics. And then, yeah, and we've also won a few awards and conference participations as well. Yeah, and next slide, I think. So yeah, I think that's it from my side. Really looking forward to working with more local partners in countries to work towards a more reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yash. And it was great to hear about your work potentially with more utilities in this space. I think when we discuss energy access, a lot of the conversation does end up revolving around off-grid energy sources. But of course, successful expansion of the current utilities and also further development of their sustainability will also be vital on our pathway to universal electricity access. So really appreciate that. And with that, we come to the end of our presentation today. So thanks again to all of the presenters for sharing more about their businesses. We'll now shift, if we could jump to the next slide. We've mentioned a panel discussion here, but we have just under 40 minutes. So what I propose is that we have a combination panel discussion and audience Q&A session here. I have been taking note of the questions that have been coming through from the audience. So thank you all so much for submitting those, and please do just keep submitting those questions as we go along. I would like to start jumping into some of these. And yes, thanks for already addressing in part one of the questions around integration of renewables comparison to other technologies as well. That was great. So with that, my first question is actually for the team at Oxo, Emily. A couple of questions ended up coming this way. There were a few questions here. I think a couple clarification ones that might be helpful for the audience. The audience asks, is Oxo a product company? And then also, what else makes the product superior and competitive?
Good questions. Yes, so we are a product company. So we produce and we sell our flywheels. They are designed, manufactured in-house at present. What makes our solution different? So flywheels, and something that I think is quite a common theme among a lot of the presentations here today, a lot of these technologies are actually quite old concepts, but they've been made new for modern applications. So flywheels are the same situation. They're a relatively old concept, but they've been commercialized and we are making them for modern applications. So our founder, Dr. George Prasnos, he was working in satellite and space applications for about 15 years in his early career, working with NASA and the ESA. And it was those technologies that he was working on there that he brought back with him to develop and found Oxo. And that is the IP that founds the kind of basis of the flywheel. One of the key differentiating factors of our flywheel compared to other flywheel energy storage solutions is our consideration of safety into the design of the flywheel. So it's, if you know a little bit about flywheels, you might have seen in the news, things can go wrong. There's so much energy that builds up, and if that's all released at once, it can be pretty catastrophic. So the way our rotor is designed as one component made up in individual emanations rather than as a one-piece component. So in the unlikely event of a failure, the energy is released in a cascading effect rather than in an all-at-once explosion. So we are able to therefore store the flywheels above ground, reducing installation, reducing maintenance as well, compared to other flywheel companies who have to bury the machines below the ground in case of an explosion or something like that. So the safety aspect is definitely a key differentiating factor, comparing our flywheel with other flywheel batteries. Compared to other energy storage solutions, thinking about like lithium ion batteries. It's hard to compare because we really target different applications. We get a lot of questions kind of asking us, particularly in our Seeders crowd fund, asking us kind of to compare our flywheel with the Tesla Powerwall, for example, but they're really not comparable because we are a mechanical battery, we don't experience degradation. We have a 4 millisecond discharge time. We can have unlimited discharge and charging cycles compared to a lithium ion battery where you would see a really high level of degradation. So we don't compete in the same market really. We prefer to work as a hybrid solution, which is what the majority of our projects are, because it makes it easier to kind of work together rather than trying to change everything entirely. We just slot in to existing systems and increase the life cycle of those batteries and stability and the power conditioning. Sorry, I know that was a relatively long answer for the question, but I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate that. And while we're on the topic of not always being able to compare solutions, I would be interested to hear from the Gravitricity team. So Robin, I was wondering if you could also tell us a little bit more about some of the benefits about the Gravitricity system. And again, how does this compare to some of those competing technologies in this space?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I mean, I would to some extent echo Emily's comments about different horses for courses and different energy storage systems for different applications. In particular, you've got high power duration applications and then longer duration systems, and the profiles of those and the market dynamics and so on are very, very different. But we at Gravitricity, we consider that longevity and attractive academics is at the heart of our proposition, and there are a number of components to that. So we've got a system that delivers a pretty market-leading energy efficiency of around 85%. So 85% of the energy you put into the system, you get out as usable energy, and then you've got consistent performance through the lifetime of the facility, and that efficiency won't degrade over time. Anybody who has a mobile phone knows that lithium-ion batteries do degrade over time, and that's something that our system manages to avoid. There are no standing losses, so when the weight is at the top of the shaft, it can sit there pretty much forever and not to lose any of the potential energy it's got. There are no parasitic loads, so for example, air conditioning systems, which are needed for lithium-ion type applications. And so, for example, yeah, so for all those reasons, from a quantitative business case point of view, we think that we've got a pretty compelling proposition. And then you add other elements. So, for example, we don't have to mine for lithium or other products, which in itself causes environmental damage. And there's no explosive chemical risk as well. So there's some of those things which feed into a direct business case, and others which are less easy to quantify, but we believe, also feed into a sort of a more rounded business case for deployment.
Absolutely, thank you for that, Robin. Of course, energy storage will continue and increasingly be important, particularly as we look at incorporating all the various forms of energy generation onto our grid, per the question that was mentioned about potential challenges in the space. There was another clarification for, I believe, Vanessa at Buffalo Grid. There was one question from the audience asking specifically, I think if you could just delve a little bit deeper into the business model. The question posed was, what is the benefit that is accrued to the commercial users of the Stream Spot Plus system, given that the service is free of cost to some of those end users?
Yes, so in a commercial deployment, the way that it works, well, first of all, I need to clarify that we don't cannibalize the users or the customers of the mobile network. Or the mobile network operators. On the other hand, we're bringing in users who would not normally or be organic users in the time frame that we can bring them in. The benefits so we align the interest of all of the parties involved. The benefits, first of all, so the hubs are located in agent locations. So where the mobile network operators sell SIM cards, mom and pop shops, those sorts of things. All of the shop owners throughout our trials consistently reported a 50% increase in revenues whilst they were hosting a hub in their shops. Naturally, because people came, they're charging their phones, they were spending 20, 30 minutes there. They bought more airtime because they had more charge, and they bought more things from the shop whilst they were there. So that was a great benefit for the shop holder. The access to charge and the access to content for the user, the end user itself, and for the mobile network operator. On the exclusive services, we actually saw an 11% conversion rate to that MNO so people could access the service. So there's benefits across the board to all the parties involved. Also, in our commercial deployments, it's important to mention that the charge and the streaming when connected to the hub or near the hub are free. But in our deployments in Bangladesh and in Nigeria, right now, those are our commercial deployments, we actually charge a very affordable $1 per month to download and take all of this content away. So all of the education and health content is always for free, streaming or downloading, because that's part of our commitment to support sustainable development. But entertainment and sport, meaning the soccer match from the Nigerian Premier Football League or from the cricket match, depending on where we are, or the latest series or some of the classical movies, to be able to watch it at home or to watch it on the go, you pay $1 per month. So a lot of our user base also is not necessarily on a contract basis who can pay $1 per month, but we can also work with pay-as-you-go customers who can pay 25 cents per week. So our system, we also have a patent granted for our cashless unlocking system that facilitates all of the transactions required for the service to work. I think that might have answered that question, Harry. Is there anything that I need to elaborate a little bit more on, do you think?
No, I think that's helpful. Thank you for the responses there.
Thank you.
We had another question come up specifically for Yash at OrxaGrid. The question specifically is, how does the company see the technology evolve with increased implementation of prepaid meters? I understand that you already can integrate with a variety of hardware, but curious if you could elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a really good question. So I was just thinking in my mind as well about this. So the first, yes, so the first point, I mean, yes, we do have DLMS support in the system. So we can integrate meter data, mainly smart meter data into the system. And the meter data is mainly used by us for demand forecasting, so that we have a better understanding of the demand requirements, thereby enabling energy efficiency recommendations to the utility. Having said that, the second point is that we at this stage are not working with consumer meters specifically, because there's also the issues about privacy and just the deployment scale or the speed of deployment on consumer smart meters. So we focused our energies more on transformer meters. So we look at aggregated data sets and thereby be able to estimate what's happening in a locality or in an area. But to answer this question specifically about prepaid meters, I think the more interesting part would be if we start integrating prepaid meter data, we can have a better forecasting understanding of when these meters are going to be cut off, or when the prepaid will basically go down to zero, and thereby understanding where that entire demand will go off, right? So that we can have a better understanding of energy efficiency over a 1 month period, instead of doing it day ahead or 2 days ahead kind of a thing. So it will help to understand a longer time cycle. That's what I think. Yeah.
Thanks much for that, Yash. Appreciate it. I wanted to shift gears and talk about a slightly different topic. Emily from Opia, you had mentioned that you support with carbon offset programs. or the organizations that take part there. I understand this is a growing space and will continue to grow over time, particularly as there's more attention around climate and how to address the climate issue. I was wondering, can you talk a little bit more about how exactly you're currently serving that market and what use cases, and how you also see that evolving over time?
Sure. So, for instance, cook stove is a very typical example of a carbon offset project, right? So the carbon credit buyers are going to finance distribution or subsidize it very heavily of clean cook stove, which is going to take CO2 out of not being emitted. And so these projects, they are governed by a set of rules, which is very strict. So the design, the implementation of the project has to follow, certain set of rules set up by some independent administrative bodies, such as the Gold Standard or VERA. And what it means is that there's a lot that whoever's going to deploy these units will have to document. And so we support them with that. So whenever a unit has been deployed, we can track it, if it's been exchanged, if it's been replaced, if they added 3 more units to the client, we'll know all of that. And then it's a very heavy component of data collection. So for instance, some of the projects require 4 pictures per deployed asset. So you end up having agents that have to upload hundreds and hundreds of photos on a daily basis. So our mobile app is designed so that the pictures are of good quality enough, but a very low data. So that's very important for them. And so yes, so this is definitely, as I said, we started, in the solar industry, but we're having more and more clients in the space of the carbon credit project, because there is so much to be done. So there's still 3 billion people clicking on open fire. So there is a lot of room for growth in that market, and we see our clients scaling at a pace which is really quite extraordinary, actually.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's interesting how you're bringing this technology to some of these last mile areas, supporting with their data tracking to comply with these programs. I wanted to ask a question along similar lines, perhaps to Francis at Carno. So I'm curious to know, particularly in thinking about how we're reaching some of these lower access regions. You mentioned some of the projects that you have ongoing, which are great to hear. So how will end users in some of these lower or harder to reach regions be able to affirm the premium technology that Carno offers? How do you plan to reach that segment?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for a technology like this, it is a premium over, say, like a traditional diesel generator, or even a biogas generator, which is even more expensive. So the business model we developed with Michele University was a co-op run business model, where the upfront cost of the generator would be subsidized by local or regional governments, for which in a country like Ethiopia, they already have a mandate to have 100% energy access by 2025. So there is incentive there to sort of go along that business model. In terms of the running costs, the advantage of a really high efficiency engine, whatever fuel you run it on, be that hydrogen, biofuel, or diesel, is that it has significantly reduced operating costs because you're just simply burning less fuel. So from a running point of view, it is actually much more affordable than these rural communities going for, say, buying a traditional diesel one, which has a lot of maintenance and a lot of a high running costs when it comes to fuel. So that's the kind of our business model for those regions. In terms of the accessibility, our engines, and the another benefit of ceramic is the sort of density aspect. They're much lighter and more compact, which means we can achieve much higher power density, if you like, than other traditional both generators or renewable options. which means that they're very easily deployable, especially to sort of hard to reach regions. The fact that we don't have cooling systems and oil systems, which is a common mode of failure in generators, means that there's much lower maintenance as well. So the whole accessibility thing becomes sort of quite good for our technology.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of potential benefits there, fuel savings, durability, etc. I guess one quick follow-up question for you then is, why haven't other engine manufacturers tried this before? I've been trying to wrap my head around that one. So anything on that would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a question we get asked a lot. And as I mentioned, engines, we've got 150 years, 200 years experience using them. And like some other technologies here, it's not necessarily, engine is not new. And engine manufacturers, they have tried to go down the ceramic engine route before. Especially in the 80s and 90s, that fundamentally the issue was that the innovation at that point was all around minimizing impact on supply chain, which is often the way large manufacturers go. Minimizing impact on supply chain, minimizing design changes. And essentially what happened is they tried to fit ceramics into a conventional engine. So trying to operate them the same way metals do, just without the cooling system, which meant that you had thermal gradients, cyclic tensile loading, among other issues. And fundamentally, ceramics just don't behave like metals do. So then they went down one of two options, which was either trying to develop a ceramics that had specific properties similar to metallic ones that allowed it to deal with the conditions, or to go down the route of making kind of like liners or sleeves for the hot components that would protect them from the heat a little bit more. So the latter option was successful, but it had basically a very small amount of actual performance gains that meant it wasn't really pursued anymore. And the former option was just incredibly expensive. And at that particular time, there was no incentive to really go down that route. And what we've done is fundamentally different. What we've done is redesign the engine from the point of view of the ceramics. So looking at ceramic properties and then designing the engine around it, so that we're not trying to force ceramics to work in environments they can't. For example, our design completely eliminates things like cyclic tensile loading. So you don't have tensile forces on ceramic. Best comparison I can make is a concrete pillar. It's fantastic in compression. As soon as you try and pull it apart, the thing crumbles. Ceramics are very similar. So part of the design is making sure that there's none of that pulling force. And second of all is eliminating thermal gradients. So all thermal gradients of the engine are handled by non-structural components with a different ceramic that has different properties to the one used for structural ones. So, our IP is not the use of ceramics in engines. That is not something we ever plan or have tried to patent. The IP is very much around the technologies that enable the ceramics to work. And that's really sort of our core technology. It's the mechanisms we've got to mitigate the issues you would normally have with a ceramic engine.
Yeah, I think that's helpful clarification, and great to know some specifics there on how you're plugging in to bring a new look to an older technology, or at least use case. Yes, I wanted to come to you on a somewhat adjacent line. So I'm curious to know more about the pathway towards enabling more utilities to accelerate the transition towards sustainable, affordable, and reliable electricity for all. Again, utilities have been operating for a large number of years. Of course, some in some of these markets are, on the newer edge. But I'm curious to know, in bringing your technology, which might be new and innovative to that segment, what are your plans really for addressing what are a number of bottlenecks for those utilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to share that. So one of the major differences, right? When we started off, we started looking at how how the utilities are currently monitoring their infrastructure to understand, how much, what are their decision support strategies in place. One of the main systems that they use is a SCADA system, which is typically, it's like a supervisory control system that's deployed across control, basically they're in control centers. But these SCADA systems are they really they're costly. They require a lot of revenue as well as a lot of long periods for deployment, right? In a lot of cases that I saw, that SCADA systems are deployed at a very high level, maybe at a 33 kV or a high voltage network, not necessarily in the secondary distribution networks. And in the smaller utilities, they're usually not deployed at all, or a system integrator came in, deployed something, and they're not really being used effectively at that stage. So with that, what we realized is that, let's try to build a complete open system that, can be deployed in pieces as per the customer's requirements, and try to focus on the benefits that the utility would get. So, our system can be deployed, only the algorithms, only the analytics could be deployed for just real-time monitoring to gain visibility, or it could be, done like a large-scale deployment. The first pilot project that we did was actually with a utility in India. This is the second largest utility globally in terms of number of customers and the power delivery. And they had all these sophisticated technologies for the big cities, but they didn't have anything for the rural parts of the network, right? So that's where we went in. We deployed our IoT sensors. We actually worked with a 2G cellular connectivity, right? So, it's not even 3 or 4G or 5G, but it was actually 2G networks, very intermittent in communication. So we had to tackle challenges around just having data storing, making sure that there's no data loss in between, and so on. And overall, we were able to deploy the entire system effectively. And now the utilities, they're getting a visibility into understanding how much are the outages on the network. If they are telling their farmers that there's going to be an outage for 8 hours, is it actually 8 hours, or is it 10 or 12? Are some of the transformers working in an overloaded condition? Some are completely underloaded. Can you optimize the network for more efficient delivery, and so on? And these are just first steps, right? These are first steps in understanding what's going on. Once you have that visibility, now they're starting to think about, can we have on-site solar generation, because this network in this place is not really being utilized. Can we have a feed-in from here, because there's good solar irradiation happening there, and how can we start utilizing more of the network to enable a faster transition towards clean energies, mainly in the rural parts. So there are many different opportunities, once you have a good monitoring system in place. Yes.
Very good. Thanks for that. And appreciate again that you're really bringing greater visibility to data to improve some of that decision making, on the part of those utilities. So that's great to see. I wanted to stay on that topic of data. And Vanessa, was curious to come back to you in regards to that topic on data and what you can gather from the hubs. You mentioned that there's a good amount of data that you can collect from those, and everyone's talking about data. So I'm curious to know from you, what are some of those potential use cases or areas of value which you think you can gather from getting that data that you're collecting through the hubs?
Perfect. No, so there's actually, the thing is, it's because it's such almost a blank canvas of possibilities. There's a great spectrum that you can find data on. You can do data from direct inquiries through surveys and quizzes. So with a particular purpose, we did run some of these in India doing our R&D about health, consumer behavior. And we also ran a campaign which was about spread joy, not rumors, because as we know in India, there's problems can go with rumors as far as people being killed in rural communities. So that's one application, which is direct research. But by just the simple usage of the content that we're providing, NGOs, organizations that are providing, for example, health information or education information can actually measure their KPIs through the data that the hub provides. We can see as far as what type of phones they're using, how often they're charging, when they're charging. I must say everything is 100% data protected to the highest of standards. But we can, through doing it correctly, find out what groups of people or particular users or in communities, in groups, in regions, in countries, or globally are engaging with in terms of content. It can be in either one of the 4 different content verticals that we're working in. So within the education sphere, we can help the Ministry of Education, for example, improve the services if we're providing 2 options, which ones people are engaging with more and having more success with. We are actually working with University College London, the Trinity College Dublin, and University of Pavia with a group of researchers doing research on the actual economic impact of the education content that we are providing based on the metrics that the hubs can provide. So doing controlled groups of deployment in refugee camps in particular, or in rural communities, we're putting almost like medical testing, control groups and placebo groups to be able to measure the impact of different programs. For content partners, such as the YouTubes or the different production companies, when putting up content, which content is more popular, what people are staying on, what people are leaving, when they're flipping from one thing to another. The other thing is likes. So for example, we can have, even though we're not providing internet, it's a simulated mobile internet experience of curated content. We can actually do the likes. We can actually have almost the full experience, but it's not the internet per se. So the data has a tremendous amount of usage, but we can learn a lot about services that are being provided and to improve services, not just from impact and developmental, but commercial as well.
Perfect. Thank you for building further upon that one.
Thank you, Harry.
Absolutely. I wanted to come back. There was a comment that was mentioned on carbon credits by Greenpeace coming out to say that carbon credits should be abolished. So Emily, I wanted to come back to that one because I think that's an interesting point of discussion. I'm curious to know, do you have a response to that one?
Well, I think it's important to note that there's 2 different types of carbon credit program, right? So you have the mandatory carbon credit program, which means, there are laws in terms of how much you can emit. And I think they're talking about these ones really, right? Because the big polluters can just emit as much as they want, and then they go and buy carbon credits. But there's also the voluntary carbon credit program, which really is a chance for local authorities, NGOs, like any responsible citizen to buy these credits and then impact the environment positively, but also from a social point of view, have a huge impact on someone's life. So I think that, it's important to differentiate maybe between these 2.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I wanted to come back to one more audience question. I think we've got time for one more, and as it will be on the topic of energy storage, I might pose this both to Oxto and Gravitricity. So I'll pose a question to Oxto, and then Robin, it would be great to have the last word from you before we look to wrap up the session. But the question here, I think it's often asked about a number of energy storage technologies, is when do you expect to see flywheel technology become cost effective? What would be required for this to happen? Greater adoption from the demand side or more production from the supply side?
Yeah, so to be honest, I think definitely in terms of reaching economies of scale, that will help massively in terms of seeing our flywheels become cost effective. But even at the point where we are at the moment, they are cost effective. We target applications that are long-term applications because the flywheel has a lifespan of 25 years plus. Targeting applications who are going to be maximizing that lifetime, those are the applications who are going to see the highest return on investment and reap the most rewards and get the most cost back from their investment. Alternatively, I did mention earlier, we're looking at licensing as a possible revenue stream in the future. This is particularly cost effective in terms of like maximizing profits from one individual flywheel. The absence of degradation and the long lifetime means that we can actually reuse the flywheel for multiple clients if we licensed it for maybe 10 years for 2 different clients. They'd be able to make maybe a 50% upfront cost payment, take the flywheel, save money on what they would have been saving before, and it's cost effective for the client, and it's a good revenue stream for the business as well. So I think the supply side of things, economies of scale would really increase the cost effectiveness, but the adoption and the demand is definitely there. We pretty much see new inquiries and new applications that we wouldn't have even thought about on a weekly basis, because realistically we are a cost-effective solution for anyone who is looking to improve the way they use energy, or even down to like improving their local economy and improving human lives. Flywheels and energy storage systems should be like not just a environmentally friendly extra to have, like a nice thing. It should be something that communities see as a tool to improve every aspect of their community for social reasons, and also for environmental, and obviously for profit as well.
Great, thank you, Emily. And Robin, over to you for the last word here. I suppose along similar lines, of course, not flywheel technology, but you're in early stage of various prototypes and starting to scale that up. So what's going to be required for your technology to be, again, cost effective and generally scale it? Will there be limitations around available mines that you can develop? I'm curious to know your thoughts there.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. And I think one of the complexities here is the different metrics which you can use to measure cost effectiveness and comparing different technologies. On levelized cost of energy over a 25-year period, Gravitricity is highly competitive at this point in time, and that's because it doesn't degrade, because there is no wholesale replacement of equipment. It's highly efficient, and there are no parasitic loads, and all of those kind of feed into the business case. But as I said, they're different metrics, and another one you can use is looking at the dollar price per kilowatt hour, and that produces somewhat different results. We are currently on that particular metric roughly where lithium ion was back in 2015. So not so long ago. We all know that lithium ion has come down significantly in price over that period. But I guess what you've got to factor in there is the number of deployments that some lithium ion and how progressed a technology they are. We're a new innovative technology, and we've got a long way to go down on our cost curve. So there's plenty of reasons for thinking that we can reduce that price, and cost down is a very important part of what we do. One of the interesting things we're discovering is that actually deploying our facilities in existing mine shafts is actually a little bit more involved than you might think, because of the challenges around repurposing mines, whereas actually digging new mines in new locations to our specifications is actually much more straightforward than you might think. Today we've got equipment that can dig mines fairly effectively without much human input, which it takes out a lot of health and safety and cost related considerations. So we're versatile in that respect, and we can deploy where energy storage is needed, and we're not therefore kind of tethered to where there are existing mines. So we think that's a great benefit as well.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that, and really excited about your innovation and also all of the innovations that have been shared here during our session today. That's about all the time that we have, but I hope that everyone's got a greater understanding of the innovations that we've discussed and the Energy Catalyst program as well. I would like to take the time to thank all of our presenters today for giving their time and sharing their insights. Also, thank you to the audience for attending and all of the engagement on the chat. We really appreciate that. And then finally, a thank you to our colleagues at IntelliCap for hosting the event. So feel free to reach out to any of the presenters if you'd like to learn more or engage further. That's, after all, why we're here today. So I hope that everyone has a great day and enjoys the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry.